Hello, and welcome to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson. This podcast is designed for anybody that wants to start or maintain or grow a solo performer or small group business. I've got over 50 years of experience, with not only my tips, but tips from folks that have done the same thing in their neck of the woods. The goal here is to make things actionable and measurable and specific so that you can get out and start earning more money today. Let's get busy. Podcast number 2, my buddy Brad Richard.
Hi there, Riley.
All right, so we talked briefly in the first one about gear acquisition syndrome. First of all, is it fatal?
Well, financially it can be. You gotta you that's one point I'd like to make real quick before we get going on gear. If you're gonna do something like this, you gotta understand that you're a small business person. And you've got to learn to run it like a business. You've got the show side of it, but you've also got the business side of it. They say probably 90% of small businesses fail because of management problems. People know how to do what they're doing, but they can't run a business. Learn how to run a business. It's not hard. You just got to stay organized. Because if you don't track your shows, know who owes you, know who's paid you, know when you're playing next so you don't miss one. All you have to do is miss a gig because you forgot about it. You're done at that place. So you got to respect the people you're working for them and really learn to run it like a business. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but just be organized. Okay, that's my sermon.
Well, let me just add on to that for just a moment as my neighborhood and the hot rod goes by. That's probably some of the most important advice you or anybody else can give, and that is learn how to run a business. Now, you mentioned in the first podcast that you had a background in sales and some doing some basic marketing and owning and running some businesses. It sounds like when you started doing your solo show, you ported all that knowledge into how you're going to get this solo thing going. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah, I tracked everything. I tracked who I saw, when I saw them, what the outcome was, and of course track shows when I had them booked or didn't book for whatever reason. I just kept track of everything because I can't remember everything, and you need to do what you say you're going to do, and if you can't remember that, you better have it written down so you can remind yourself.
Bradley, would it be safe to say you know your way around a database or a spreadsheet or a word processor?
Yeah, I've got a little experience.
Well, I
that's
pointed
that's
out
the
in,
not that's the not so fun side of business. I mean, the performing is great, but if you don't do the grunt work, you're not going to be successful.
it's interesting. I think that's probably one of the most important things that all of us as performers have to do is we have to take care of the other things. One of my favorite reality shows was the VH1 Behind the Music, and they did a thing on Sebastian Bach and Skid Row, the '80s metal band. And Sebastian says, "Man, I'm great for that hour and a half on the stage." He said, "It's the 22 and a half hours off the stage that's my problem."
Yeah, that's about right. Or it
And
can be.
those of us that are solo performers, we're business people, we're entrepreneurs, we're booking
Mhm.
agents, we're sales and marketing teams, we're customer service, we're research. We do so many things. And we have to do a good job of all of them so that we do, fact, finally get in front of the client. We've got a product that works. Now, I'm going to ask you something that we briefly touched on in the first podcast. You mentioned that the first time you showed up just with an acoustic guitar, no mic. The second time, the lady puts a mic in front of your face. How did you transition from that to using tracks, Brad?
Well, I enjoyed doing it. And that's absolutely the first thing of everything. If you don't enjoy doing it, don't do it. That doesn't mean don't be nervous and don't keep trying. But if you just would rather be somewhere else doing something else, do it because you got to enjoy it. And I enjoyed it, even as bad as it was. I wanted to do it. And so, after those first two experiences, uh, I decided that, well, like I said, nobody ran screaming from the room because of my voice. So I might as well just go ahead and see what I can get done. And that's what I did.
Did you find that having not been a singer, or certainly not having sung outside the bedroom, by the way, you didn't do choir in church or school or anything growing up, did you?
No, but one time I was in church and we were singing a song. him and somebody looked over and said, "You got a nice voice." I
Interesting.
never forget that.
Isn't that amazing?
That's the first time I ever even considered that I could sing.
You know, and here's the thing that I find fascinating about this, Brad, is that you start piano at 8. All of a sudden you're playing it without using the notes because you've got a great ear. You sing, you have one off night, and it takes you out of singing for a few decades. Then you come roaring back, and you've got a great singing voice. As I said, I enjoyed the CD that you sent and all the promo stuff because you are good and you got a lot and played a lot of shows. So when, as I said, as a result of that, I'm assuming that your voice got stronger the more you sang. Would that be correct?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that's true. It's like anything else. Um, I just never thought about it much after once, like I say, once I started singing and nobody started screaming, I just kind of went from there.
That's so interesting, and having, of course, the self confidence to say, hey, you know what? Nobody ran from the room, and of course, in a lot of these facilities, many of the residents can't run, but that's another story
Well,
altogether. But it's
they can't run, but they also, a lot of them can't hear so good, so that kind of
yeah.
helps.
But I think the great thing about it, and this is probably one of the reasons I have such fun doing them, is that the response is immediate. If you are good or you hit a song they like, they go crazy.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
you get instant feedback.
there are a lot of shows that I perform for a lot more money for a younger, hipper audience, and I'm cheerfully ignored for the entire duration of the event. And so I think one of the great things about performing for these kinds of events is that you do get positive feedback. People will let you know if they like what you do. And again, if you've been smart about tailoring what you do to the audience, you have just increased your success chances exponentially. Um,
Absolutely.
so you start off taking a guitar, and then you start taking a microphone. And what else were you taking shortly after that before you get
Well,
into doing tracks?
well, then I started to do, put together a system, PA system, and backing tracks, and so that it was a more complete show, and that went over real well.
How did you do
Uh,
the backing tracks, Brad?
well, back in the day, and I don't think you could even do that today. I downloaded MIDI files off the internet, and then I'd run them through soft synths to get the sounds I wanted. And I'd, move them around and play around with them till I got it the way I wanted it. And then I just convert it into a WAV file, and that was it. I mean, it took a lot of work, but again, I don't even think you could do that today because most of the MIDI sites are gone.
Well, I'll say this. I first of all, I've done exactly the same thing you have, and you were an influence about this. Again, as I said, but one of the things that I think you can still find the MIDI files. You have to dig a lot more because of the whole
Yeah,
Napster and all of that. The problem with downloading free tunes and stuff like that. They're still out there. You just have to watch out for it. But when you had the tracks behind you, did you find that there was a level of ease and comfort you wouldn't get, for example, just playing the guitar and singing?
well, after a while, not really, because I did a number of songs just me and my guitar.
Okay,
So so I mean, I like the backing tracks, but like Red River Valley, I just played with my guitar
yeah,
because a backing track on that would just be overkill, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
And but it was always, yeah, the backing tracks helped a whole lot because there's a ton of songs I just couldn't play otherwise.
Now, were you playing acoustic guitar or electric guitar or both on these?
Electric,
Okay, okay.
electric, but I ran it through a processor, so it's kind of sounded acoustic.
Okay. All right. Now, when you played these tunes, let's say you're playing a song like Red River Valley on the acoustic guitar or on the electric guitars and you're singing, you're right. You really don't need, we don't need drums for Red River Valley or Take Me Home
No,
Country Roads, really. You can have it, but they're not necessary.
right?
Did you have the electric guitar set up like an acoustic with bigger strings since you're doing more strumming, I'm guessing?
No, I never even thought of that. I
Okay.
just it's just my electric guitar, an Epiphone ES335 clone, and a big green guitar.
Yeah.
So everybody remembered the guitar if they didn't remember me.
Yeah.
But No, I just kind of ran it through the acoustic guitar simulator
Okay.
so that it sounded more like an acoustic guitar. Not exactly, but close enough for government work.
Yeah.
And just went from there.
Now, one of the other things that I find interesting is that you said that you would combine just playing the guitar and your voice with tracks on shows. Did you find that that was a little bit kind of the best of both worlds, maybe?
Yeah, very much.
For a long time, even on my retirement shows, all I would do were tracks. And then I had kind of an epiphany about 9 months ago that I could actually do a few shows that are just acoustic guitar and voice only. But what's funny is that I got bored with that. And so now on a lot of these types of facilities, I'll do a combination of songs. And it's interesting you mentioned Red River Valley. Give me names of a couple of other songs that you might do on a gig like that that went over well.
Oh boy,
Just the
my
old
memory's
ones.
got so bad I can't even remember what I did. But uh, Sunny Side of the Street,
Yeah.
that was a good one.
Yeah.
Keep on the Sunny Side. Some old time gospel like I'll Fly Away and
Yes.
uh, uh, what's that other one? And
Something
of
like
course,
Ramblin' Rose or something like that?
yeah, I would have done that if I'd have thought of it, but I didn't.
Yeah,
Um, some old Hank Williams. They always loved old Hank Williams,
yeah, yeah.
and I love it too. So things like that.
Great, great. And you mentioned the gear acquisition syndrome. Did this become a problem? You mentioned, and by the way, Brad has got a beautiful green Epiphone. It's a 335 style. I think it has got P90 pickups on it, right?
No, I put humbuckers in it.
Oh, did you? Okay,
Yeah,
good. That's a little
I
bit less
completely
noisy. So
I rewired it and put in humbuckers and locking tuners. I like to putz with things.
good. So you were doing some of those mods yourself.
Oh yeah, I do all of them myself. I
Okay,
rewired it.
cool, cool, cool. How big a sound system were you using on these kinds of things?
Well, it depends on where I was playing. I on the biggest gigs, if it was outside like a community event, I used a couple of EV ZX1 speakers
Hmm.
uh, with a Soundcraft 600 powered mixer, and I also had a R. Boy, my mind is just going an RMX 2450 amp with two JBL M Pro 15-inch boxes. It put
Cool.
out a lot of sound,
Yeah.
and I didn't use that too often, but I just like the gear.
Well, it's interesting. I had the same conversation with Freddie Tripp, and Freddie takes a lot of amplification on his gigs, and he'll pull out at the event itself what he needs out of his SUV, and I think that's probably a good way to do it. I have probably erred on the side of having a smaller rig over the years because sometimes I'm accused of playing too loudly. But having said that, as I said, I think that one of the good things about gear in 2023, comparing it even to 2013 or 2003, is that you can get really great sounding gear nowadays that's lighter than it used to be, which is
Hmm.
a great help for those of us that have back problems.
Uh, I started off with a pair of EV. I don't even know what they were. They were They were three ways. Uh, Big boxes, rectangular boxes, weighed about 100 pounds each, and I got them for free from a guy. But after trying to get them up on a pole, I finally had to just give in and sell them off and get some JBLs that were half the weight
Yeah,
because they were just too much.
yeah.
One show, a guy had to come up and help me.
Well, let's address that for just a moment, because if you're bringing a lot of gear, sometimes you need a little bit of help with that. Did you do your own cartage, lugging in and out yourself, or did you ever have anybody like a wife or significant other, somebody help you?
No, I had it set up so I could do it all myself and do it real quick. I took a hand truck and built a box on it, and kind of just made it so I could fit everything in there. I could fit my powered mixer. I could fit I could lay my speaker poles on it. Had a couple of things to hang speakers on. Everything was in this little rig, and I'd wheel it in. I could be set up in 5 minutes
That's terrific.
and
Yeah,
ready to go.
yeah.
But I had it down to a science.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I want to veer in a different direction for a moment because I want to talk about something that's affected you and me recently. First of all, are you playing out right now?
I'm starting to get back to it, I think. I just bought a little Fender Acoustic Sonic 40 amp because it's got, you know, a microphone, a guitar, and aux input. And it also has a line out. It puts out 40 watts, which isn't that big, but I've got a really, really nice old DB powered speaker. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they're a German company, top of the line.
Hmm.
And it puts out 80 watts, and I can run a line out of the amp into it. So 120 watts is plenty for the places I play.
Sure.
So that's what I'm planning on doing. I'm not going to be using the big rigs I used to use.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds kind of like what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I've tried to downsize and downsize, and going to be using the e-verse going forward. Just on a poll, in fact, one of the things that's nice for that, again, as I said, is that it's got the option to run batteries, and
Yeah.
it produces 121 dB at the front end of the speaker. Most of the places that I play don't require that. So that
No,
if I have a big outdoor event that I've got a couple of those in Oklahoma coming up shortly, I can supplement that with other things. But that's a great thing. So when you, as I said, when you had done your marketing for this, you put together an entire package, which was real impressive. You made things easy for people to say yes to you, Brad.
that's the key. That is the key. Uh, don't go in confident and know what you're wanting to provide and communicate that clearly. And then it's up to them. And like I said, if I had to get my foot in the door, I'd cut the rates or I'd do it for free once to show them what I had, and that's all I ever had to do.
Well, I think that's really good, especially for folks that are starting the solo act from
Right.
scratch.
Yep.
If you've not, particularly in this market, this is a little bit different from doing a nightclub. You could do a nightclub like that if you want to do a club or a restaurant. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door at a steakhouse here in Frisco almost 30 years ago. But I think being flexible with that, having good marketing information, right? Being
Hmm.
personable, having material that you've got that you feel like will work really well in that arena, and believing yourself and just having fun. I think those are the secrets, right?
They really are. They really are. And it's you've got to sell it yourself. Like anything else, you're a one man show, and you're all there is. So you've got to sell yourself, and you gotta. And as much as anything, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. You got to enjoy selling yourself. You've got to, enjoy talking to the activity director or whoever's making the decisions. And that doesn't mean when you're first starting out, you're going to be nervous probably. And that's fine. There's a difference between nervous and just not caring. And they know they've interviewed tons of people. So I'd go in and again, like if I had to, I'd tell them, listen, I'm just getting started with this. How about if I just do a free show for you and we'll see how it goes? Because I need to see how I'm doing. And that basically got my foot in the door. And once I was in the door, I was set.
That's terrific. I want to talk briefly about something that's affected you and me recently, and that's health scares. The
Hmm.
importance of taking care of oneself. Um, I had an accident last week and had to have a total hip replacement, so I had to cancel some shows, and uh, I'm going to have assistance with my wife to help me in terms of load in and setup for the next few shows, which happened when I had a knee replacement about 3 years ago. But let's talk about health and how important it is to be healthy if you're going to be a solo performer.
Well, if you can't perform, you're done. There's nobody to stand in for you.
That's true.
It starts and stops with you. I just I haven't done any gigs for a year because I had prostate cancer and just finished radiation treatments a couple of months ago. And I'm just now finally getting enough energy back to where like I said, I'm thinking about getting back into it. I bought this little Acoustasonic because I want to go down in my basement and do an hour show and just see if I can get through it, if I've got the energy. And if I do, then I'll keep going and or whatever. I'll see what happens.
Here's a
But
question. When you performed in the past, were you standing or seated or both?
both, sometimes standing, sometimes seated, just depends. Um, I kind of prefer seated, but sometimes, if I had to, I'd do standing. I could do it either way.
It's interesting because that was one of the first things that I had to do when I returned from having the knee replacement is I had to be seated for a while. And I found out that I actually played guitar better. Um, and I'm probably going to have to do that again, as I said, with some shows coming up even next week. But I think that if you have enough energy, right, and
Yeah.
you have the acuity to be able to remember the words or whatever and can sing and play, I think you can still do that. One of the things that I've talked about on this podcast before is the importance of taking care of yourself, drinking enough water, getting enough rest, doing the obvious things, because we are, in fact, the chief cook and bottle washer, are we not?
Yep. Hmm. Yeah, and if we can't do it, it doesn't get done. And just like with sitting or standing, I would rather sit myself too. I think it's easier to play. The guitar is much steadier, and although to be absolutely totally honest about this, uh, I hate to admit this. Well, I don't really hate to, but I record all my guitar parts into the songs, into the backing tracks. So my guitar isn't making any noise when I'm playing in front of people. Uh, I still play it exactly the same. It's no different. If I turn the volume on my guitar while it was going, it would sound exactly the same. So I'm not cheating. It's just that if I don't have to worry about making mistakes playing, then I can do a better show. Then I can just worry about the show itself. And I don't know. That may sound a little bit like cheating, but I don't think it is because it's me playing. But it's just then I know it's going to be a good show because I'm not going to have a bunch of mess ups. Hmm.
Well, let's talk about that for just a moment because you and I are both singers as well as guitar players.
Right.
Right? And I remember Greg Lake in an interview with Guitar Player magazine almost 50 years ago talking about, he says, of the two things, he said, I'd rather just have the bass or the guitar part where I can concentrate on singing because he said that's the most important thing. And I
Hmm.
think what you said is absolutely true. By the way, a lot of what you do, I do. On a lot of my backing tracks, I'll have several guitar parts if the song requires it.
Yep.
And then live, I'll either play one of the acoustic or the electric parts live. But this is a generation nowadays with a group like Coldplay. Anybody that believes that they're getting all those sounds on a show with an upright piano, a bass guitar, a Telecaster guitar, and a drum set is being played.
Well, it's been that way forever, though,
Yeah, it's
Riley.
true.
I mean, I look back on some of the concerts 20 years ago, and I'm telling you, those guys doing gymnastics and stuff on the stage and not missing a beat, no way. I'd like, no way. Why would you? If you play it and record it, I don't see it as cheating. And if it helps you put on a better show, uh, then why not?
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I think that's been more the rule than the exception.
And I think, again, the bottom line is why are we there? We're there to entertain an audience. How do
Right.
we entertain our audience the best? Well, what if we play every part the very best we can? If we play it beforehand or we physically play it where they're there, does it really matter? Not really. The
No.
audience wants to connect with the song. They want
Right.
to have some feeling, right? One of the great things
Yep.
that I know you see this and I see this again. If I'm doing something like, Hey, Good Looking, and the audience is singing along, at the
Yeah.
top of their lungs. They are back. It's 1959 or 1960 all over. Hank's song is on the radio and they're
Yep.
living it and they're loving it and it takes them right back there. We're creating emotion.
Yep. And it doesn't matter if it's pre-recorded or live, or it just doesn't matter.
No.
I mean, as long as I've played it and recorded myself, I feel like I'm playing it just that I played it before. And I think that I look at it as I'm providing entertainment, not a concert. So they're not here to see me and my technical expertise, and they're here to be entertained. And I do it the best I can, and doing it mistake free is probably more edifying to them than not. Anyway, that's how I look at it.
Brad, that is total wisdom, my friend. In fact, I might have to adopt that as because that's what we are. We're in the entertainment business. We're
Right.
entertainers. It doesn't matter if I don't play this solo correctly or that solo correctly. Did the people that come, did they have fun?
Yeah.
Did they feel better when I leave than they did before I got there?
Yeah.
Right? And I
Yeah.
think that could be true with anybody with a solo act. And that's to me one of the. In fact, let's talk about that for a moment. Once you played a gig and you got paid and all that, and you're driving home, whatever. What's the best part of it for you?
The best part of it for me is just remembering the fun and the people and just what could I do better? What did I make a mistake on? Just critique the whole thing, but and just kind of I don't know, kind of get home and relax.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty worn out after even a 1 hour show.
No, well, I understand that perfectly. I've had shows where I'll do two of them back to back in one
Hmm.
facility, different rooms, and
Yeah.
that's tiring.
Yes,
Just
it is.
knocking down and moving from one to the other because you have to be really focused on who you're performing for. And now I've got to change my focus, and now I've got to be over here, and that does take a lot out of you. Um, I think for me, probably the greatest thing about doing any sort of gig is if the audience connects with me and they really feel like, hey, you know what, we had a blast.
Yep.
Um, my wife and I had a show we did north of Frisco last year, July 4th thing at a guy's huge farm in North Texas. And he liked me well. And he says, look, he said, I want you here for next week. He said, send me a contract. He said, I'll pay X amount, just be here next year. And I said, fine. So he booked me for the next year's event at that event. And, I can ask for nothing else. That's
No.
the great thing about being a solo performer. And I think one of the other things too, you just mentioned very gently the word ego, but let's talk about that for a moment. You have to have a little bit of love and belief in yourself to be able
Hmm.
to share that love and belief with others. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Uh, and you've got to have confidence in yourself, but it has, in my mind, it has to be paired with humility because I'm not setting the world on fire no matter what I do. I'm not, I'm just me, and I do the very best I can. And ego wise, that's what I expect of myself. But it also, I got to keep humble and realize that, this isn't the end all be all. And as long as people are enjoying it, they're connecting and having fun, then I've succeeded.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? I think we'll wrap up with that. Brad, this was marvelous. I have learned a lot. I've got some new favorite phrases from our two podcasts. I look forward to sharing this with our listeners. Any final things you'd like to share with the Band of One podcast listeners?
Well, there was one, but I can't remember it already. That's the problem with getting old. You start losing your teeth and your memory goes. And yeah, I'm telling you.
Brian
Uh,
Tracy had a joke on one of his motivational tape series. He said they interviewed a guy who lived to be 100, and they said, "Hey, what would you have done differently?" He said, "If I was not going to live this long," he said, "I would have taken a lot better care of myself."
well, that's true. I've been forced to because, uh, once I quit drinking, I I ended up getting oh, what do you call it? Anyway, just tired all the time and worn out. And so I had to change my diet and be careful of what I ate. Slowly, that's gotten better over the years, but I've taken pretty good care of myself, and that kind of shows today.
Well, the fact that you can play and you can sing and you can do an hour show for people and they enjoy it and that you want to do it, I think is really, really big. I think one of the things that I've taken away from this is you have to have a desire to do this, which clearly both of us have. You have
Yep.
to have the willingness to learn. For example, you learned how to use did you use a digital audio workstation? We're using software to create these tracks or make these tracks. And how'd you learn that?
Mostly, yeah, on my computer using Reaper
Okay.
and a variety of soft synths
Okay.
to just and my keyboard, my piano to, input some stuff. Just yeah, whatever I needed, and just made
Wonderful.
them. The
Wonderful.
one thing that I'll leave you with that I think is probably the biggest compliment you can get is I was playing a community event a few years ago, and I think I played for 3 hours. I mean, it was everything I had. As far as music wise, I was out. I played my whole repertoire and then it was over. And so I started getting ready to pack up to leave, and they took a collection up, and they came up and said, "Can you keep playing?" I said, "Well, I mean, I was tired." They said, "Well, not really. I'm out of music. I played everything." Well, he said, "Here's 175 bucks. How about just playing the same stuff over for a while?" I said, "Oh, okay. I feel a little more energetic. I think I can do that." And so I did. I played for another. It wasn't 3 hours. I didn't have that in me, but another hour and a half. But it was a real compliment for them to come up and do that. I mean, extremely. I'd never had that happen before, but they enjoyed it that much, and what more can you ask for?
That's a marvelous story. I've had the same thing happen where people want to pay me to play extra innings, is what I like to call it, right? Baseball terminology, and so I think that's fantastic. Brad Richard, thank you so very much for everything today. This is marvelous, and I've enjoyed having you on, my friend.
Well, thank you, Riley. I enjoyed doing it, and best of luck in the future. Keep playing. I'm jealous with that EV system you've got, but I'm to the point now that I just got to keep it real simple and light.
I get it. I get it. Once again, thank you, Brad. I'm
Thanks.
Riley Wilson, and you've been listening to the Band of One podcast. Thank you for listening, and hope that you'll share this and like it with others. If you have ideas for upcoming podcasts, you can get in touch with us through the Band of One Facebook page, podcast. You can also contact me directly through my webpage, which is guitarmadesimpler.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.